I will, as the Executive Director, go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll go through a motion to adopt the agenda here and then go to an election of officers, at which point there's a president elected. I'll turn it over to them and they can continue on with the nominations and elections. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're going to start off with the election of president, and I will open the floor for nominations. Yes. So evidently there's some challenges with picking up voices, so I would just ask folks to speak into the microphone as close as you can so that can be picked up on YouTube. Okay, we'll start off by opening the floor for nominations. Is there a nomination for president?
I'll nominate Julie. She's doing a great job.
Okay, so Julie has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Third and final time, any other nominations? Hearing no further nominations, nominations are closed and we can proceed to a vote. All in favor of Julie as chair for the 2024 EDA, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Julie.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to carry it on. Thanks, Matt. All right, then we're going to conduct the election of the vice chair, treasurer, assistant treasurer, and secretary. So first of all, the vice chair, I'll open the floor for nominations. Do I hear?
You want to keep it, Tom? I'll nominate Tom Schulzenberg. Did I say your name wrong?
Any preferences?
If you'll take, you gotta agree to what I mean.
I would support Tom. I think Tom's been doing an awesome job, and I would support him. I appreciate the nomination.
Likewise, Catherine.
I'd support Tom as well. Any other nominations? All right. So Catherine, you're declining the nomination, or how do we proceed with this?
Yep, she can decline it.
Okay. So we can proceed to a vote. All in favor as vice chair, Tom, and I always butcher your name, Schulzenberg. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. And then we've got assistant secretary, who that should be Mr. Look, per the...
Well, you would have a treasurer, Madam Chair, and
treasurer.
Then assistant treasurer,
Okay,
and then
treasurer
secretary.
would be as specified by our bylaws. That would be the city administrator.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry, I'm skipping around, but so do we need to make a vote on the treasurer?
You can make one.
Okay, so Matt Look for treasurer for the EDA. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we've got our treasurer, and then the assistant treasurer is our finance director as specified by our EDA bylaws. So, and that is Mike Jeziorsky. So all in favor for Mike as our assistant treasurer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we've got our assistant treasurer, and then Carrie Frost would be our secretary per our bylaws. So all in favor of Carrie Frost as our secretary, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we've got Carrie Frost as the secretary. All right. So then we've coming up on our approval of the November 2023 EDA minutes. And if I've got a correction and a question, but I wanted to open it up to anybody else. Hey, Brian.
Well, I'll
Any-
make a motion first, and then we'll do the discussion.
Okay, sounds
I'll
good.
make a motion to accept the minutes from November 20th, 2023.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I abstain.
Discussion first.
I wasn't
Discussion.
here for the
Oh,
minutes.
discussion, and then discussion. So my question relates to, let's see. I have one small correction, and sorry, I will. Line, it has to do with the AC Red update. Let's see, it is the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth paragraph, line 42.
Which page?
Page 1 of 8 on the draft minutes. In section 4.0, should be ALTA, A-L-T-A, and rather than ultra, just a minor correction. And then as it relates to, let's get down, we had long minutes. It had to do with our discussion of the memorandum of understanding for the costs from the ANOCA, the AC Red costs. And since we didn't meet, we didn't have a quorum in January and February was canceled. So did that go in front of council and then that's all been taken care of? Or what's,
Yes, Madam Chair, it did.
pardon me?
It's already been taken care of by council.
Okay, awesome. That's all I wanted to check on. All right, so do I need to make a motion with just the correction?
Mhm.
So I'll make a motion for approval of the November 20th, 2023 minutes with the one correction. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that carries.
Abstention.
And you're abstaining. Thank you. All right. Item number 5, we've got our Booster Day 2024 Booster Day Committee presentation.
Hello, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Stephanie Dorn, and I am the coordinator of East Bethel Booster Days, our city's annual community event. I am really privileged to head up an amazing small group of volunteers that put on this event each year. One of our things this year that we really wanted to focus on was building awareness within our community and even within the city leadership of our event and kind of grow the event more. Surprisingly, there are lifelong residents of East Bethel who have, 1, never been to Booster Day before, or 2, have heard of Booster Day. And we're talking an event that's been going on for over 50 years. So I am making the rounds, so I apologize for any of you who go to multiple meetings. You might be seeing a lot of me between now and July. So tonight I just wanted to come before you guys and share with you our plans for this summer, ways that we are looking for more involvement from some of our city leadership. And then as well, because you are the EDA, I want to make sure to highlight the ways that some of our local businesses are supporting our event already. If you're on social media, Facebook in particular, and involved in either following our Booster Days page or in the community groups, you may start seeing a little bit of a rebranding with Booster Day. We are adding to it, we're going to hold on to the traditional name of East Bethel Booster Day, but you're going to see it marketed as the Party in the Park. We like the tradition because, like I said, Booster Day, as far back as I can look, I have found reference to a rally day 50 years ago, or 51 years ago, before the city went from a village to becoming a city. They held a rally day to get everyone excited about becoming a city, and then they continued from there. So you'll start seeing us promote it as the Party in the Park, because we really want it to be a party that celebrates our organizations, our businesses, and most importantly, our residents, and give them a day to come together as community. So this year, some of the highlights that we have going, first off, the event is always free to get in. There's no gate charge. It's always free to attend. And that includes entry into as to show a car or to be a spectator into the car show. We always offer the kids free inflatables. Some events you have to buy a wristband, not at ours. We pay for the inflatables and allow kids to play for free for as long as they want. And then also a petting zoo, which is always a big hit. Included in that, we also have free entertainment throughout the day. This year we will be having a canine demonstration by the Anoka County Sheriff's Office, which we're excited for. We're adding, if you're familiar with Cirque du Soleil and aerialists who do silks and hoop work, we have a trio that's coming in and will be performing right in the park, doing some silks work and stuff, so that's really exciting. And then in the evening, we have a free street dance in the park. We are bringing in a dance floor right into the park with music provided by a really high energy band called the Express Band. Other activities will include the East Bethel Bandits baseball game and fireworks. And I believe the seniors are planning on doing the pancake breakfast. Suzanne, you might know for sure if you've heard some talk of that at the seniors. So the day will start with the pancake breakfast. If you have a competitive streak, you are welcome to join in some of our competitions that we have going. For our kids, leading up to Booster Days, we will have a coloring contest for kids 12 and under. We were really excited because Compass Childcare is sponsoring that, so they are providing the funds so that we can award prizes in first, second, and third to 3 different age groups. If you like cornhole, we will be having our 2nd annual cornhole tournament. It's $40 for a team of 2 to enter. We will be having cash bingo, which is fun because it's a community event. Kids 18 or under 18 can play if they're with a parent, and they can win money. And that'll be presented by Chops Inc. And then my favorite, if you have a talent, sign up. We're having a talent competition. First place is $350. Second prize is $150. So we're really looking for people to come out and show off their singing, musicians, dance, whatever you have, come out and show off your talent. Any of the information to sign up for any of the competitions and things like that is on our website. The community involvement piece that I want to grow from a city standpoint. We know that the city has always been very supportive of the event. They provide the fireworks each year, and I know that various members of council, I know Mayor Lewis was there last year, do come out to the event, but we would like to request a more visible appearance from the city. And to that effect, we are talking about, we want to provide a space for the city to have a booth. And how can you as EDA members take part in that? We would love to set up a rotating schedule throughout the day where members from each of our authority or our advisory boards, commissions, and the city council, as well as any city staff that might be interested, come staff that booth for the day to be able to connect with our residents. And I know Mayor Lewis, one of the things that you talk a lot about in council meetings is how do we communicate with our residents? What are the best ways? And I think that being in a casual environment and being seen is a great way to have, to facilitate some of those conversations with people who might not come out to a city council meeting or to an EDA meeting or a Parks Commission meeting. So I would love to see you come out and be a part of that. Carrie Frost and I will be working with you. You'll be hearing from us on how you can sign up for those shifts. And then beyond that, individually. We always have spaces where we need help the day of the event for volunteers. We need volunteers who will take a shift supervising the inflatables area, helping with setup and tear down, checking in vendors, just general help throughout the day. And those are shifts. Those are anywhere from maybe an hour or longer. And for those individual volunteer signups, that is live on our website. Just go to the volunteer opportunities page, and there'll be a link to a Sign Up Genius where you can just pick a shift and sign up. So we would really encourage anyone to, if you have friends, family that are looking to get more involved in the community, please consider volunteering on July 20th. for that. And included with that, if there's any teenagers that would need volunteer hours or community service hours, just let us know. I can write them a letter as proof that they volunteered. And then that brings me to our local business support. Our event is funded fully through the donations that we receive from community partners. And that would include monetary donations and in-kind donations of goods or services. So this year we're really excited to have on board already. These are our early bird sponsors that we have named at this date. Route 65, Brad is always so supportive of our community and our event. So Route 65 is back as a sponsor this year, and they will also be there with a food truck, and they provide and they also have a bar set up throughout the day, but especially for the dance. Aggressive Hydraulics, Ham Lake Lions, Ham Lake Chamber of Commerce, Innovations Plus, Goldman's Greenhouse, Advantage Construction, Connexus Energy, Compass Childcare, as I mentioned, is sponsoring our coloring contest. Neat and Clean Company, 5D Wellness, and Brittany Kate Builds. The other way that beyond those monetary donations that businesses can get involved is we always have space in our vendor market. And so, if you're talking with any businesses, encourage them to reach out to us about a vendor space for an informational booth to advertise their goods and services. If they have job openings, it's a great place to connect with the local community for job openings. And we just really want to build on what we already have going and grow it to be really an event that reflects the city of East Bethel. When you're 48 square miles without a dedicated city center, it's really hard to have an ongoing gathering space. We don't have a third space really outside of maybe our bars and restaurants, and this is one way that we can kind of give community members a time to gather with their neighbors, connect with those businesses, connect with our nonprofits, and connect with city leadership. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to field any tonight. Otherwise, I can always be reached. Carrie knows how to get a hold of me via phone or email. And I really encourage you to, if you haven't already and you're on Facebook, please follow our Facebook page. It helps us organically grow our followers so that we can get the word out about the event.
Can I ask you a question, Matt? Sure. Get up on my mic here. Do we have a target date for the next East Bethel Bulletin?
We do not have a target date yet, no.
Okay, I think it would be useful for a half page or whatever to be dedicated to Booster Days.
And I usually do work with Carrie. Carrie usually lets me know when the...
But beyond just an ad, maybe, some verbiage and
absolutely.
expand on it a little bit.
I can do that. I know in the last one I did an article, and I can write something up for Carrie. Absolutely.
I was thinking too, as it relates to the bulletin, it might be helpful to have a sign-up sheet at the booth for residents who don't receive the letter via email, that they could sign up for that as well.
I will make a note of that.
East Bethel Bulletin, that goes out to everybody.
It should, yes.
Regular mail.
I know it took a little while.
And
I live
there's
in
also email.
the East Bethel Village Apartments. I moved there. We moved there 3 years ago, and I know that it took us a little while to get into the swing of things. We weren't getting them for a while, but I know now we are, so we finally got added.
Well, I think they're more apt to get them now than they were before, because we're making an effort to make sure that they don't get hung up at the printers.
Perfect. So any other questions for me?
No, good presentation.
Yeah. Is the anticipated layout the same as last year?
So last year we were in Booster Park East, and we love Booster Park East. It's just because of the pond and the layout. But logistically, it was kind of a nightmare for our vendors.
Okay.
So we are moving back to West because it's easier for setup and tear down of our vendors. Eventually, my dream would be that we can encompass both parks and take advantage of all of the shade that's over in east that we're missing over in west.
That was the bonus,
Yeah.
shade.
So, anything else?
No, thank you.
If not, thank you so much. Like I said, if you have any questions, just, reach out to Carrie and she'll get you my information. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you so
Stephanie.
much. All right, item 6, industrial park concepts.
Madam Chair, if I may, I just want to, for the edification of those that are here and those that are watching, we're in the process of going through a repaint of the facility here. So as they see the different color and paint, we're catching up with that. That's not the way it normally looks. It's in process. So I just wanted folks to be aware of that. But we wanted to include this concept of, or this conversation of industrial park concepts. It's beneficial for a community to have a good balance between housing and industrial commercial development. And so the city has seen some housing projects come through recently, and we wanted to kind of bring before the EDA a discussion point for what it might look like for an industrial park concept. The current industrial park that we have is filling up rapidly, and so kind of in preparation of once that's full, where would you go from there, or what would be a good landing spot for another one type of concept. I had Aaron kind of put together some different maps of possible areas, and he identified some areas that are available in your packet there. And I will just kind of draw your attention to the last one, which is, this one's up further. There's Whispering Aspens there, and this area here is all available for potential development. But I will draw your attention to the very last one here, and this is Sims Road here. And part of the discussion that we're having right now, and Peggy Scott, Representative Scott, and her staff are helping to put together a bill for a possible water tower, a water treatment plant, and the piping necessary to hook up to the schools that are here. ISD 15 has indicated that they're very interested in being able to utilize city sewer and water services. And so the question then became, what would it take to do that, and what collateral benefit could there be? So there's some industrial park that's up here currently right now. This is kind of a proposed area for the water tower. There's a decommissioned landfill, I believe, right there, about a half a mile away. So the water would need to be treated. The wells that we have show kind of higher levels of radium, and they show high levels of manganese, both of which are not something you want to ingest. Manganese can be can reach a point of toxicity. And so as it relates to elementary school children, obviously we want to make sure that we're not hooking them up to water that might be creating, some sort of developmental issues for them. So we're kind of currently working on this concept of state assistance for a water tower concept, whereby we can hook up these schools. But then the question becomes, what else can be hooked up to that? You have a main line, sewer line going through here, going down to the Met Council water treatment facility. And the question then becomes, is this land somewhat of a perhaps ripe for commercial development? It is currently zone B2 central business and some light industrial. And so I just wanted to put this on the agenda as a discussion point for EDA commissioners to determine if that's a path that they'd like to recommend to the council. I know the mayor and I have had conversations about what might this look like, or where might it go type of thing. So I think there's a value to everyone's opinion and discussion on this particular topic. So.
All right, 3 points. As far as the radium and the manganese, we've known since, I guess I got involved in 2010, 2011 took office, and that was the biggest part of the problem with Whispering Aspen, the first well they put in, and the reasons for the second well that had to go in. Between that and then the rust. Now, we need to get the city engineer involved because the force main that runs up to Whispering Aspen, Castle Towers was only put in there to decommission that plant up there. It was not put in there to do a bunch of hookups to. And I've got, I guess I could bring them to you. I've got the portfolios that were generated when we were talking about doing that with all the specs in it. You know, it'd be great, when it first was mentioned to me about developing this here, it's like, well, you gotta have sewer water up there. Because if all we're gonna do is give them water and then have them put septic systems in, then we might as well just focus more down in the sewer water district or close to try and feed that and get that thing paid off. If we're gonna expand it, then we need to do our due diligence and make sure that things are in order. Now, Brian, I'm sure, you know, you were around with the water issues, the manganese, and
First off, I'd like to apologize for getting here late. When I woke up this morning, I was in mountain time. And when we returned home and I pushed the magical button to have my garage door go up, it only went up halfway and it jumped the track. So I've had an interesting evening so far. Yeah, the biggest, one of the things that I specifically remember about, for instance, the landfill decommissioning, for lack of a better term, and I had a very close friend of mine who was working at the time, he was working for Wenck and Associates. They had air strippers in there, they called them, where they pull the water out, cascade it down, and to have the VOCs, the volatile organic chemicals, escape, so to speak. They evaporate. I was under the impression that the landfill was not necessarily undevelopable, but it was undevelopable for residential purposes, so to speak, because of having to drill wells in there. So if you can't drill a 4-inch well in there, why would you want to drill a 12-inch well in there? And I'm not saying I'm opposed to it or not. I'm saying it's something that needs to be examined by someone by a series of hydrologists. I think that hooking up to having the schools wanting to have water, I certainly understand that. I don't know what they have for a wastewater treatment system there. Right. I know they have something in back of them, and that's it. Insofar as, yeah, Bob, I was there when, you know, I was arguing, you know what my position was at that time on the sewer system. I was astounded when I found out, you know, and I was not a proponent of it. There's actually 2 lines running up the highway.
one up and then one to return the water back up.
Absolutely.
That only goes part way.
Yeah, that just goes up to,
209th, I believe?
no, it's up, it's just south of where First State Tire used to be, where the trucking company is. If you look over from the highway, you can see like a rural wooden type fence. That's an infiltration area.
Right, because what they were doing is running everything down to the plant. The solids are trucked out to Fridley, and the water that's reclamated was sent back up north.
Correct.
And at one point, they wanted us to do a reverse osmosis onto that, which would have added another 2 million. Now, we have a vacated, I don't know what to call it, drain pond that used to belong to the treatment plant at Whispering Aspen, Castle Towers, which was drained, And then either we paid or like some guy paid to come and take all that waste out and then spread it on his fields.
You'd know more about that. After I left the council, I took a break.
Yeah, it's pretty well burned in my brain.
So
So-
Bob, your suggestion and your discussion relating to the Whispering Aspen area, are you stating that that should be more of a priority?
There isn't much we could really do with that. I mean,
Okay,
we need to look and get the specs of the pipes and exactly what was put in the ground, because again, when we had a couple of million extra. Anyway, and the EPA came down and the tank that was up at Whispering Aspen was just 50 years old, it was leaking, they had fiberglass patches and metal patches. And the EPA said that one of the crap beds was failing and the other one was slowly to follow. And we either had to decommission it or redo it, or within 10 years, we'd be putting a couple million into it. So we said, well, we've got this extra 2 million, let's decommission that plant, run the pipes up just to take care of that. It wasn't, at that point, if someone were looking at putting a business and hooking up, they were told 75,000 for the lift station and to hook onto the pipe. But it was not designed to put a bunch of commercial businesses to hook up. So I guess the first thing we gotta do is get Craig Yoakum and say, hey, what is in the ground? I mean, he's the one that did the design work. And as far as the water and the stuff up at Whispering Aspen, they still got brown water from the rust and whatever. So I mean, I think we've done enough up there that we need to focus. Now, one of the things, the Maxwell report that was done, the feasibility report that was done, it was actually done on the Sims 65 area and 65 and 22. And what was put out to the public was that, well, no, they came and said that the 65-22 was the ideal place to put it. Well, actually it wasn't. The 65 Sims would have been because of the residential areas, because of the schools, and then that would have been the city center, which would have made more sense. Well, that kind of went by the wayside, and it was, well, geez, now we're gonna make 65 and 22 the city center, we'll make it like Nicollet Mall, blah, blah, blah. That didn't work. So now we're back to reality. That area's filling up. If we're looking at doing anything, then yeah, I mean, the Sims 65 area is good, but, we gotta really make sure we test that water, because there's actually 2 wells down in the sewer water district. One of them's capped and initially we were told they were gonna have to just flush out 750,000 gallons a month because we wouldn't be generating enough water flow to keep everything going in the tank. So that would be my suggestion, is get Craig Yoakum, say, hey, or I'll bring in that portfolios and.
Madam Chair, I did have Craig Yoakum look at this discussion ahead of time, and he has done an analysis on it, a preliminary analysis at least. So we can follow up with him further on that if that's the direction that you'd like to go. What I will also say is that up at the Whispering Aspens here, there are 2 things that we're applying for in parallel. The first I indicated was a clean water bond through the state of Minnesota. And the public-private benefit of that, hooking up, the school, or the schools rather, and the possible economic development associated with bringing water and sewer in that area. That's a $10.5 million ask. Up here at Whispering Aspens, there's a couple of tanks that are buried in the ground right now that they are at their capacity in terms of the fire suppression. And so part of the discussion is to look at this area for putting in a 500,000 gallon elevated water tank there as well. So what we did on this one is Representative Ennemer, I'm not sure what cycle it is, but they call them priority projects, better known as earmarks. And given his position as majority whip, he's probably in a pretty decent position to have a significant amount of, call it a lion's share maybe in terms of dollars from an earmark scenario. What I know from earmarks in the past is if you ask for $5 million, you're likely, you're in the running. If you ask for 20 million, you're out of the running. We asked for 2 million. And we did so strategically because 2 million on a $60 million earmark is a rounding error. And that may be an opportunity then to put a water tower in there. Now the argument is that currently the water up here is not being treated, and as Councilmember DeRoche indicated, there's a lot of rust up in there. But at least it would be in the same condition that it currently is. You just have more capacity at that point. And as that develops out into phase 4, I believe the housing portion of it is, and then along the highway there's a commercial district, and across the highway there's land that can be developed in one capacity or another. That will require water as well at some point. Now, if there is not sufficient sewer pipe to hook up the city sewer portion of it, that may be a detriment, at least in terms of an investment required to get sewer services to them. But the majority of the commercial industrial sites, their primary question is what type of city services do you have, water, sewer, because of their usage rates tend to be quite a bit higher, and they don't really want to get into untreated water scenarios for whatever their processes might be. So we're running both of these requests parallel. We may get neither, we may get both, we may get one. But the reality is that I often jokingly refer to this as opium, other people's money. And what we don't get in the form of opium or other people's money comes out of the taxpayers of East Bethel in the form of levy. And so we want to try and apply for as many dollars as we can while trying to figure out how those dollars can be used to better plan for economic development, and how we can parlay those dollars into economic development, because that's going to help with the outstanding loans for the sewer systems. It's going to help with tax base. It's going to help with collateral beneficial things. So that's kind of some of the thinking to let folks know kind of what we're thinking from a staff standpoint of where there might be some dollars that can be invested, and we obviously wanted to bring it to EDA here for your considerations as well.
With I'm not an engineer, but I have been involved where we've had force mains installed on projects that have run. That's basically a pressurized pipe. I think there's only one lift station. I've never really looked at the drawings for the sewer system, but I believe there's only one lift station on that force main. And
Yeah,
that's
I think
up
you're
at,
right.
what's that, Bob?
Yeah, I think you're right. I could find out. I'll give Matt the material.
Well, yeah.
So, no.
There's, but you can't just tap into a force main to add on. You have to put in another lift station. Right. When the wastewater treatment system was coming in, I always thought that the key situation for the next piece of development was where you're going to put the next lift station, because it's a lot easier running gravity main than it is running force main. I like that idea up there for an industrial park insofar as getting water to it. The other thing that, in my experience in construction, that's very important, and especially if you're going for commercial industrial, is fire protection. And it is really expensive to put fire protection in a building if you're not tapping into a public water main. So I don't really have an answer. I'm just saying it, to me, there's a lot of balls that are up in the air that are all kind of spinning, and we got to figure out where to go with them and where to have them land.
Right.
How much is Whispering Aspen taxing or putting a task on our water system up there, because if we're just gonna be adding another water for suppression so that he can add on to his development, I kinda got an issue with that. Because he's a private developer. And if we're just putting money in to make him more money, that doesn't make sense to me. If we were doing it for a commercial, industrial commercial park, that the citizens or the residents are gonna benefit from because their taxes are gonna go down, maybe, right? Versus us doing it so that Whispering Aspen Development can make more, or say, hey, now we can really put more houses in.
I think their development is already approved in terms of the phases. The issue then becomes public safety in terms of the water that's available up there, and can we respond in the event that, you know, you have a large fire scenario. Obviously, you can send up tanker trucks, but they also have limited capacity. So if you have if you can plan for that, in other words, these phases are already approved, and once built, if you can plan for that, so you have the water suppression up there, you have a decent argument for a request through Emmer's office. It's not an economic
Oh,
development,
right,
it's
right,
a
right.
public safety requirement at that point that that I think positions us well, because this is all about telling a story, right? You're telling a story, you're trying to differentiate yourself from everybody else that's asking for the same thing. But our story, I think, is a solid story because it's a public safety story up here.
What Matt and I have been talking about is, recently, East Bethel has done a lot of residential development, with the most recent being the Capstone. Moved to the next step in the approval of preliminary plat. It's not a done deal, and they have obstacles ahead of them. But anyway, there's been an emphasis in that area, and we need to focus more on the industrial commercial, which pay property taxes at twice the rate residences do, and they don't have any kids to educate at $12,000 a head on top of it. And they also provide jobs in the local community, so it has a lot of sales points. What I like about Matt's approach is what was so onerous about the way it was done in the past with the water and sewer system was all betting on the come, which is about the dumbest economic development stratagem you can adopt, is just let's bet on the come. Obviously it didn't work out, and I labor the point, and I'm not gonna stop laboring the point either, come to think of it. But I like the idea of using grants, other people's money, whatever you wanna call it, as a facilitating tool, because as of the end of December, I got the number from Mike Jaworski, the people of East Bethel, not somebody else, the people of East Bethel have paid $13.7 million on that water sewer system that we have, that was built back in 2011 is when it was started. And we've got 22 million to go. You know, that's a lot of money out of our pockets. So that's one of the things that pushed me in the Capstone decision when I ran the numbers, just for my own benefit as well as whoever wanted to look at them, was it would really help defray some of the burden we have on that system. And but you can get twice the results basically through commercial industrial development as you can residential. Residential is great for rooftops for grocery stores and retail spaces, but the commercial residential is a better next step in our economic development policy, I believe.
So are you saying that you think we're gonna do better with industrial commercial on the north end, or are you talking about Sims and 65?
I don't have a preference in particular. When you're talking about the existing commercial industrial development, you're talking about west of 65 between 181st and Viking, basically, right?
I believe it's right here, if I'm not mistaken, right on the north side of Sims. There are 6 lots, I think, that are left. One of the
Oh,
challenges.
you're talking about where Moonshine Whiskey
Right.
is, soon to be Muddy Cow or whatever?
Right.
Or, yeah.
One of the challenges is when you have to, as a commercial entity, provide for your own well and septic, you're at a half acre plus, maybe an acre or more. Versus if you're hooked up to city services, say it's in here, you know, you can put a lot more density in terms of commercial industrial, and utilize that land a lot better by putting more units, or you know, the ability to put more units in, and maximizing the space essentially at that point.
Well, the city owns property, well, or has easements. It's
You know,
on
this
Johnson
one-
Street from Sims all the way up to 221st. That was purchased, I don't know how many of you remember that one, but that was like 3 people showed at the council meeting. So that was a 3-person vote on that big deal. But we did purchase the easements, and I think it goes through part of Strandland's property to the west of 65. And then it goes down with the thoughts that eventually it was gonna develop kind of by Moonshine Whiskey and Polaris and.
I thought the city also
Yeah,
picked up an easement from 219th up to 221st through the Atkins place.
I think we tried to.
Is that what it was?
And I don't think it worked. And I know we also tried with Correc, which is just south of 221st. And we told him right in, right out, and we worked out a bunch of crap. And anyway, he decided not to do that, but that was also gonna be housing. But where that's at.
You know, I look at, and Julie knows far more about development and what drives it than probably anyone else in this room, in my opinion. The most valuable piece of property for development is sitting on the northwest corner of Highway 65 and 22. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, that's Bob King's property.
Valuable,
Developable?
Sure, developable.
Developable?
I mean,
Okay.
it's a large parcel, but if it was partitioned into smaller parcels, yes, it would be. But, I mean, I was going to say, given the fact that we've got smaller parcels here already, we've got the service roads, it really seems to make sense to focus on this quadrant.
I'm not speaking against that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that to a certain degree, economic forces drive when something should happen. And, I mean, when I was on the council, we explored a number of different ways to be able to get water treatment down in at what at the time, and, you know, being an old timer, it's always gonna be Sauter's Commercial Park to me. You know, it's classic. You know, are we forcing something? Are we building it and we're hoping they will come, so to speak?
Well, that's the way it's been done in the past, and that can't continue that way.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
there's no appetite for that in East Bethel anymore.
You know, and one thing people gotta remember, this is not a sewage treatment plant that we have. It's a water reclamation plant. Big difference.
I understand.
And
I
people
mean, you-
still keep, oh, we got a sewer plant. No, it's not.
No, you
It's a
know,
water reclamation plant, and the stuff is trucked out the front.
and when I found out that, I spoke against it. My jaw hit the floor when I found out that that was not a full wastewater treatment plant. That was someone did a pretty good job of selling that deal.
I'm buying
Yep.
it.
Well, and that northwest piece of property that King owns, I hate to say duped us, but he got an extra lane put in because he was telling us that he was going to develop that and put a supermarket in.
And
So he worked with us in the county, and we had an extra lane put in, and then he said, well, no, we're not gonna do that right now.
I wouldn't be surprised if, because of the amount of residential development that's happening down in that part of the city, that if he doesn't start to think about doing something there.
We're a strip mall.
You look at the pad sites that would be out there. If he, you know, how about opening up a nightclub, so to speak, or a whatnot, that had frontage on 22 and 65, because the shopping center or grocery store doesn't need to have that big statement out on the highway, so to speak. I mean, you look at all these pads I've never built on one, but you look at all these pad sites that happen after a strip mall or grocery store come in.
But you also gotta remember, we're talking about unstable ground. And Craig Yoakum agreed to that, and that's why I had it at that one council meeting. When they were gonna put the sewer pipes in, and initially they said they were gonna have to put 75-foot pedestals down to hold it. And then when they did all the borings and stuff,
I don't think they ever drove the piling at one time.
No,
we're
they
told.
didn't.
Yeah, they didn't have to put them on piles.
but this came back up when we were discussing Capstone and this, how many acres is that?
16.55.
16.5 acres, well, that's gonna be commercial, and we said, oh, but have you done the testing on the ground yet?
There's a lot of different ways that you can build on top of bad ground. You know, the most obvious being driven piles or screw piles or geopiers. The industry is,
Right?
you know, since I've gotten out, there's even been more changes, I'm sure.
But you have to look, Brian, this is East Bethel, this isn't some big, huge city, right? And so, is it cost prohibitive for them to do that? Anything that's gone through, even on the roads commission, okay? What's the fiscal responsibility to the residents? Okay, is it something that's gonna help them, or is it something that's gonna pump somebody's ego? Okay, now it's gonna help the city, all right, how can we do this without doing the same pitfalls that we did last time?
I would have liked it if they had shut the doors on anybody moving into East Bethel 46 years ago. Cause I would have been okay then, you know.
But we've only got so much ground. And,
I know, Bob.
you know, with Matt looking at it, saying, okay, if we could get funding or help to develop some of this in the industrial commercial, that'd be great.
Oh,
Here are some of the benefits. You have 200+ acres of undeveloped existing commercial industrial zone land. Some of them are already on the market. 35 acres of commercial park as indicated on the northwest corner. 11 acres of city-owned land, three parcels, one of which is the water tower site that was indicated there. You're in close proximity to East Bethel and Cedar Creek Elementary Schools. We talked about that. And it's kind of already zoned for this type of concept. The question is do we start pursuing and marketing it as, you know, this is going to be the new park, if you will, the new commercial industrial park. ACRED once notified that this is kind of the direction the city would want to go if they wanted to go that way, could start kind of identifying some of these parcels as available parcels to site selectors that might be interested, all of which will depend on that item right there, that water tower. So, but again, based on the proximity to the landfill and the possibility that the water, everything kind of flows south to the rivers, you could have some contamination related issues either today, tomorrow, or both.
yeah, it flows to Cedar Creek.
Right. So I think treating that water would give this whole area then the ability to utilize water that, they can use for whatever their process might be, light industrial or whatever the case may be. The benefit of which is a lot of these parcels are languishing right now. They're not selling. They've been for sale forever. But they're ripe for development. Anytime you have investment in major thoroughfares such as Highway 65, you're looking at millions, hundreds of millions of dollars being invested in Highway 65. You look at the primary area of that work being done is Blaine. They're largely developed. So it's going to push north. You're going to get increased pressures going north. So if you set up and are ready for that development and you control it, in the sense that you want, certain things to occur, but you get the necessary components in there to make that feasible, you kind of start to make it, in a way, pad ready for that development to occur.
Matt, can you speak more to those pressures, specifically in relation to our current industrial site at Viking and 22? I know we have a limited number of parcels available, but in our discussions and our meetings, the concern of most businesses is the cost of the hookup. Is that still continue to be an issue? And what about some other discussions that we have of further development to the southeast portion of that area?
You know, we have a little bit higher cost for Sac and Whack, or Sac particularly, given the arrangement that was made. It's not outrageously more. It's a little bit more than neighboring communities have. But I think just so folks know, the Met Council charges a SAC rate for units, however they calculate that. And no one can really get away from that. However, on the agenda further here is Councilmember Miller had brought up this concept of, can we provide loans for SAC and WAC? So we'll get to that a little bit later. That might answer some of those questions. But as it relates to anywhere else where you're going to develop, every city has SAC and WAC, your sewer access, your water access charges. And what those charges go for is what's called depreciation. Depreciation of the pipes that are in the ground. So they have a life to them. Is it 20 years? Is it 50 years? Whatever the time frame is. Engineers know better, and I'm not one either. But eventually they'll need repair, they'll need replacement, and that's where those funds kind of go into. Cities that have their own police forces, they depreciate a police car the day they buy it. So they start putting money away because they know that police car is going to, run its life in 2 years or 3 years or whatever the time frame is based on the mileage. They need to have money in place to replace that car the day they need to replace it. And the same idea goes with the SAC and WAC fees for hooking up to city services. So I'm not sure that it's outrageous. I know that for some restaurants, for example, they shoulder a larger burden that's quite enormous based on the usage. And I think that discussion coming up might be something where if folks are saying, hey, we want more restaurants, and restaurants can't afford to hook up, and that's a deterrent to them coming to town, at that point, maybe there's some action that can be taken to try and mitigate some of those costs. That's a policy decision, obviously, but.
So would this be a way of saying the limited capacity in that area is due to those hookup fees? And even though there might be an empty lot here or there, it's in a sense not attractive to future businesses, whereas this proposal would be much more attractive.
Well, I think in the next discussion, I can probably add a lot of answers to questions on the loan availability and whatnot.
I think in this district here, if you don't have those city services, if you don't have that treated water, they won't even consider you. So if they have to build a drain field, if they have to try and filter their own water to prevent rust and scale or whatever's coming out of the well, depending on what their process is, they won't even consider it. They'll move on. They just don't have time to play those games, unfortunately, at the speed of business.
But the important thing is it's predicated upon getting the OPM
Right.
instead of betting on the come with us on the hook for the
Right.
ticket.
Right. So
That's a big difference.
Right. So essentially, with an outstanding $20 million for a community this size, that's a very large debt to pay back.
Yeah.
Adding another $10 million to that might be a little less than appetizing. So your option then becomes, well, when we pay off the $15 million, then we can look at these other investments. At that point, you've lost the opportunities, obviously, the time value of money, if you will, for these projects that could be coming here. More importantly, though, you have residents of East Bethel. I would assume that if it's similar to Anoka County, we export 70% of our workforce. So they're driving to wherever, could be Eden Prairie or wherever. Imagine someone driving down the road to Sims and arriving at work. It takes them 5 minutes to get to work. Your quality of life went through the roof at that point because you're not dealing with snow and traffic and congestion and everything else that goes with
A
it.
lot of
So,
them do that at Aggressive Hydraulics. They live in the city.
yeah. So this is an opportunity for folks then to apply for and work within, their city, which is a benefit that I think is enormous.
One thing I recall, and I'm probably going to be wrong about the numbers, but I recall that Whispering Aspen, the water hookup charge is very low compared to the average of other hookups to the system, and I assume it's because of the water plant that was there or something, but that may need to get kicked up to where the hookups for new development, it gets the question you had, Bob, about why are we putting up a tower so they can build more. Well, if they're collecting substantial WAC fees, water access charges, or connection fees, and then they could have a lower cost per 1,000 gallons, which has been a topic of conversation on one of the East Bethel
Right, they're
sites
higher now.
recently. Yeah, they're high. They're very high
Well, Brian,
on a
do
per usage basis.
you
Over
remember
double
the
what?
discussions in 2010? Right around October, when people were coming in, talking about their water bills being $700 and some a quarter, and why is our water so high, and
It's like $18 a thousand or
Up,
something.
are you talking about up in the,
Whispering Aspen?
well, Whispering Aspens, no. Because, I mean, obviously, I think 2002 was my last year on the council.
Yeah, this was during the city.
So, okay,
hall
but this
meetings.
was after after the mobile home park was removed. I mean, the city had to,
The mobile home park is still part of that.
yeah. But Whispering Aspens was a separate mobile home park from whatever it was named back.
Castle Tower.
Thank you.
Well,
Now it's Bridgestone.
The city and a contractor got together because they were gonna put homes on Menard Lake. The contractor went bankrupt or bailed out or whatever. The city took it over. Firebird LLC, which is Whispering Aspen or BDM Construction or whatever you wanna call them, came in and they bought it from the city with this multi-phase contractor, whatever you wanna call it. But there were lawsuits, and I still have the paperwork from the State Court of Appeals where there was a lot of wrangling going on. They tried to raise rates to recoup the money, the city did. Court of Appeals came back, said, no, you can't do that, they had an existing contract, and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, people back then were saying, why is our water so high? Well, part of it, that the council said, well, just don't water your grass. Well, you gotta water your grass. And they said because the one well they had put in didn't, well, manganese and other issues that they had to put in the other well, so they have to pay for that. Well, now, like he said, people are going, well, are the water rates ever gonna go down up here? No. But if the city is paying, like we either are or we're projected to pay, and they're gonna be making more money, charging more money, I can't see making anybody else more money off of the rest of the residents.
I agree with that.
I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. But
So, I mean, Matt, is the proposal that a water main also then gets run up to serve the Whispering Aspen and whatever you wanna call whatever name the trailer park has on it now?
No, put in another one up there.
Well, there's two wells that are in there right now. Both can operate simultaneously. One cannot operate on its own due to
Yeah,
radium
no,
levels. Yep.
I'm aware of the whole,
Yeah. So the wells, I think, are operational and fine. It's just the capacity issue that's up there, holding water. The two tanks are insufficient right now for public safety. So the earmark ask, if you will, the $2 million would be for a larger holding tank or a water tower
like you said, a tower.
that could service then not only what's proposed to be built out, but then potentially other areas across the highway as well, depending on what's going to be developed over there. And the city can certainly go with, $500,000 or half a million gallon, or they could go with 1 million gallon if they want, or, you know, whatever to plan for the future, but the, that would be additional cost, obviously, than what that earmark ask was.
So why isn't the developer responsible for any of that? Or if the developer, for the residential area, if the current water system isn't enough capacity for the new development, why can't they just say, okay, you have to put in wells and septic for each individual house like I have? That seems more fair than me having to, and other residents who are on well and septic, having to pay for that. And the other thing is, your $2 million doesn't seem like it's nearly enough, because I think what we got out here on 22 was almost 50 million. So how are we gonna, what's 2 million's like a drop in a bucket compared to what we're gonna need for these plans. So those are my two situations right there. I mean, I think it's totally underestimated everything's gonna cost, and where's the developer's responsibility in any of this?
Historically, I don't think developers pay for city services. If you're
But
gonna hook up.
Whispering Aspens isn't really a whole city service from what I was understanding, because that's like a private little water system just for that development.
Owned by the city.
Okay.
So that's why these residents pay WAC fees, and they happen to be higher than everybody else at this point. So generally speaking, developers put in roads and curb and that sort of thing. They don't put in the city services such as sewer and water. That's a responsibility of the city, if they're going to be charging those fees for that service. And yes, we do have an estimate of $2 million on a water tower. Yep.
And that's from Craig, right?
Right.
Yeah. From Craig Yoakum's.
Pretty good deal.
Well, I think it'd be interesting, number one, to hear what Craig has to say.
Sure.
And I'd also be interested to hear if he has any insight or knows of any hydrological, got it out, okay, reports on what the condition is right now of the water that's coming out of their test wells. I would ask my friend, but he died about 15 years ago.
Yeah,
So-
I don't trust any landfill anywhere myself.
Yeah.
You know, just some of the dumping that's happened in the past and the new ways of doing things today because of the problems of the past. It's just an inherent problem waiting to happen. And if you're talking elementary kids at that point, you can't even gamble.
Well, that's just,
I mean,
just south of us here is where, that used to be the dump.
Right.
And so that's all useless. I don't know how many people knew that.
I mean, the whole code, Minnesota State well code, I mean, like I said, my well is well over 40 years old, and, at the time you had to go through 2 hard pans so that you completely cut off surface water, that you're down in in an aquifer, so to speak.
Yep.
I agree, it's probably the best site available. I don't want to throw in another variable in the whole equation, but I know you see in a lot of communities, granted it's usually up on a hilltop, they have these long, slender water reservoirs that are tied in, and all they are is to boost the pressure. I wonder if something like that would be feasible. What's more cost effective? You know what I'm...
Well, I think we gotta figure out which aquifer we're tapping out of, because we can only use certain aquifers. I don't know if anyone knows that, but,
Yeah, you don't want to use the manganese aquifer.
well, I
Yeah.
mean, there's like the St. Croix and the St. James and,
Yeah.
Right. We'd have to leave that to the professionals drilling.
yeah. I don't know, what do you mean, you don't trust the little,
All right.
A witch and stick.
all right, well, I guess what I see is we gotta get a hold of Craig, pick his brain, I'll bring you in those things, if you wanna make copies for people, that'd be, all right.
Do we know what Capstone was gonna do? Because they had brought up that they discovered that that land was contaminated and need to be remediated, and then they asked Anoka County for support, and Anoka County said, no, not interested. Do we know what they intended to do or intend to do?
What piece?
To get that land ready? The Viking Meadows development.
They'll have to do a full environmental workup on that. Yeah, before they can start getting the approvals necessary to get that built.
Yeah,
I think some of the greens had some contamination on them, as I recall.
They got a heck of a punch list from both, both the city and the county that they're gonna have to
Yeah.
meet.
And they're fully aware of that, so they went into it with eyes wide open from their environmental firm. So, yep.
Good question. I hadn't
Yeah,
thought of that.
any other questions, or, this is just for discussion, correct? Okay. Anything else? Good discussion? All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 7, the Sac and Whack business loan discussion.
So, Madam Chair, Councilmember Miller had brought this forward to me to bring it, to start looking into what's the possibility of a business loan discussion for Sac and Whack fees. And so we started doing a little bit of research on it. I have kind of detailed out here was in 2012, the Met Council had approved some changes that were business-friendly changes. That once fees were paid, that there were net credits that could be applied to someone coming in after that business leaves. In other words, they wouldn't have to pay that fee all over again to try and facilitate new businesses coming in. I did a little research here then, also dating back, in 2013, Jack Davis explained at a work meeting on March 6, 2013, that the City Council received information regarding a loan program for sewer and water access charges. The concept was to provide low-interest loans to those businesses that would be impacted by having to hook up to the city's new water and sewer systems. And they would set up a loan type of scenario where the subject property would pay an upfront payment of 20% of the charges and then have a low-interest loan paid to the city for the balance of that. And there would be an application fee covering staff time and that sort of thing. So there's been, since 2012, 2013, kind of these discussions that have been ongoing. And so the question then becomes, again, in kind of an informational discussion of, is this something that the EDA would recommend in terms of trying to facilitate development within a city for those businesses in which the Sac and Whack fees are cost prohibitive to them coming in? I think the issue he raised was Route 65, which has some unusual characteristics there in that the operator is not the owner, and the owner isn't interested in hooking up to city sewer and water. However, the operator is, and so there's that type of disagreement there. But that type of a scenario where a similar business to Route 65 saying, we'd like to hook up, but we can't afford it, what are our options? I think that's kind of where the discussion should probably go. If the EDA wants to participate in trying to facilitate development and what sort of criteria that might take shape as.
Well, there is more information than that. In fact, I think I might have talked with you, Matt.
That's where this is generated.
I have copies that we did do low-interest loans, and some companies could do it. We lost 4 businesses because they couldn't afford it. And at that time, Route 65, Carlson was the guy that owns it, was offered the same deal and didn't want to do it. And so in 2015, there were meetings between Jack and, I can't remember who else, but all the businesses on the east side of 65 to say, okay, look, if you guys are interested, this is before they did that, redid the frontage road, and at one point, you know, we were told, well, the frontage road isn't the city's anyway, but then all of a sudden, it is the city's, so let's put infrastructure, and then we're gonna make everybody hook up, and where the businesses had a hard time was the mantra all along was, well, if you don't hook up, you don't have to pay for it. Well, the statute 429 in Minnesota says if your sewer water runs by your house or business, the city can force you to hook up. And that's exactly what East Bethel did. So some businesses did take advantage of the low interest loans. I think it was, 4 or 5%. And it was a good deal, but the ones that didn't, now they're coming and saying, well, we want this deal. Well, why didn't you take it back then when it was offered to you? Because I don't know if we have the money or the wherewithal to do it anymore. But it's not a new concept. And kind of, well, you either take advantage of it at the time or you don't. And like Matt said, Brad doesn't, Slossons don't own Route 65. Carlson owns the property. In fact, if you look on the GIS map,
Is it
you'll see-
Osborne now?
No,
No,
he's
it's
got
Dave
properties on the
Carlson.
north and the south of that.
Still?
I'm sure it's Dave Carlson yet.
Hmm.
I don't think.
Yeah, if you go on the
That's
GIS
interesting,
map
'cause
and you look up on
The
the tax
Osborne name
website-
was on the fire inspection, that's why I asked.
Yeah, he's got other properties. Between him and Carlson, they own quite a bit in that little
Yeah.
strip.
Yeah.
And to the south, yeah.
Because at that time, when Walt was alive, he was talking about taking the 40 acres behind that, and that frontage road, when you get off 181st and you come around the corner to that, I think it's Baltimore or whatever.
Yeah.
They were talking about, he wanted to make that residential and he was gonna run that frontage road all the way up. But because there was no city sewer water at the time in that part, they decided not to do it. Well, then they did one little section of the service road, and then they did another section, and then they were assessing the businesses, which was kind of a backwards way of doing it, and it hurt a lot of the businesses. So, hey, you know, if it works and if they can qualify and
Pretty
You know-
much any time you own a business, the option of either you can pay me a lump sum or we can cash flow it, they're gonna say, let's cash flow it. I mean, it's just common sense, unless your interest rate is too away from the market, you know, too out of the market or whatever. But otherwise, it's a pretty easy call for them.
Well, it wasn't,
By
it
the
wasn't,
way,
one way or another though, Kevin, it was, here, you know, do the loan thing. And back then, I mean, that was a pretty good deal.
well, yeah, if the interest rate is market competitive, you're gonna go with the loan over
Right.
putting together a big bucket of money, you know, drop on something that's just a utility. And they have, you know, Osborne has that 9 acres further to the south, just south of Route 65, and he wants to get water and sewer to that site too, so that dynamic has changed since that conversation you're talking about too. You know, since 2015 anyway, it's become more of interest to him.
So for any potential, do we have a estimate or how do we calculate these net credits? And any guess on what the pool would be?
Just trying to pull up the budget here to see
Okay.
what EDA budget is. Where did he put it? This is a Mike question.
You mean the per annum?
Right. 136,000 is the 2024 EDA budget,
I
so.
don't know what the accumulated is so far, do you?
It looks like 213,200.
Okay.
Seems
So the
low.
question would be, A, do you want to participate in trying to find businesses that could take advantage of this?
Right.
B, how much do you want to allocate towards this every year? And then C, we could, as staff, we could put some parameters around that and bring it back to the EDA
Sure.
for approval. But, you know, again, it would have to be getting the word out to businesses that this is available if you need it. And then there will be an analysis done on prioritization of what businesses, you know, would kind of fit the parameters that we're looking to assist, because you may have 20 businesses ask and you have enough for one. You have to figure out a way to try and prioritize
Sure, we have to
that.
allocate and
Right.
rank the requests.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think this was a program run through the EDA. I think this was a program ran through the council.
It would be a
The loan
recommendation
program.
from the EDA to the council,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Right.
Under the auspices of economic development, of course.
Sure.
But you're not proposing an increase in the levy to help.
I mean, that can be a recommendation from EDA as well to council. I don't know that, you know, that the levy would be increased. That would be a decision the council would have to make at that point, but it depends on what requests come forward. Like, for example, Councilmember Miller formerly worked for Cabela's, as I recall, and I think his dream for that corner of if I can speak for him, I don't know if he's watching, but that corner of 22 and 65, be a beautiful Cabela's there would be, you know, in his dream. You're going to subsidize something like that to
Oh,
come
yeah.
in. I mean, you can do a little research on what Rogers did to get Cabela's over there, and it was no small undertaking, but huge in terms of an anchor. You want to talk about collateral development that follows that? Huge anchor. I mean, they swarm them. So it's decisions obviously that cities have to make, and how much do they want to get into on some of these things. And these site selectors are pros. I mean, they know this. They play off of everyone. You know, this person's going to give me this. That person's going to give me that. You're going to have to do at least this to be considered. But at any rate, this is smaller scale. This is, you know, small business operators that barely have enough to get into business, let alone pay huge sack and whack fees on top of it, you know, so.
Well, it
I'm not
just
sure our sack and whack fees are what I would call huge.
Well, they're higher. Well, they had to be because.
Well, I mean,
council amendment.
I mean, the biggest cost is gonna be hiring a contractor to put the pipes in the ground compared to the sack and whack. And you talk about development. I remember when that Cabela's down in Owatonna, there was hardly anything out there at that point in time. When I roared by at 80 miles an hour at 4 o'clock this afternoon, there was a lot of stuff out there.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So,
So any thoughts? So we'd like a vote on this.
yeah, so if someone wants to make a motion to investigate this more, they can craft it however they'd like to. If they want to allocate X amount of dollars, you know, recommend that council allocate X amount of dollars to this venture, or however you want to approach it.
This seems like one of those situations where you might want to hire someone with an expertise in this. Does that make sense to you? Because when I'm in favor of temporarily hiring people with an expertise as opposed to overtaxing our existing staff for knowledge that they may never use again, and take us 6 months to learn, get up to speed, whereas you can just hire somebody who knows this particular aspect of economic development. Does that make sense to you or not? Or or is Mike already all geared up on it?
Again, I think we can probably craft something that's reasonable. I know we can pay somebody to do it too. I would assume no one's going to do it for less than 10,000. somewhere in that realm.
I have no idea.
But I think we can probably craft some criteria around it and see what other cities have done on it and kind of duplicate some of that
Have you
work.
ever run into this before?
I have not. I have not run into sack and whack challenges like this before.
Well, I mean, the loan aspect of
The
it.
credits.
Yeah.
No, the credits are interesting because you do have businesses that go out of business, and those credits, according to Met Council, stay with that property. Now, the question we're trying to get an answer from them is, has that changed in 2012?
Sure.
And the people that put it in place have changed since 2012, and so it seems like that information may have been lost with the people that left. But if that's still in existence, I think that's a huge benefit to any sort of
Right.
person coming in. If they can utilize those credits, it's like finding money.
We just need to formulate what those credits are and how they're allocated. And that's,
The credits part of this discussion
Right.
was the thing that I had the hardest time putting my head around. I don't exactly understand that, whereas a simple loan fund, that's easier to understand for me, you know.
The credits isn't something the city is involved in. That's Met Council.
Yeah, okay.
That's Met Council. So you have the city and you have Met Council. Met Council is going to charge their SAC fee, but they wouldn't charge it if a business is moving in from a vacated business, is the credit concept. The city has a SAC and WAC fee, which is the cost to provide the water and sewer service that we charge, again, for that depreciation concept, or replacing those pipes, paying for those pipes over time.
It's also called a sinking fund. That's the other name for that kind of thing.
We don't have any credits on the city side for that. That's more of an
So
operational
that's
side.
totally administered by Met Council?
The credits are administered by Met
Yeah.
Council, if
Yep.
they still are,
if
is
they
the
still
question.
do it that way, right?
So,
Well, and would they even disclose that to you if there was abandoned monies or whatever? Or would there be a timeout that if, a place doesn't reopen within this period of time, they're not eligible?
yeah, they have a
advanced or-
period of 5 years for the initial grandparent determination, grandparenting on that. So, yeah. But, aside from, I forget the name of the restaurant that we talked about, rezoning there. Hunter's Inn.
Yeah.
They've been, I think, out of business for longer than 5 years. So in a situation such as that, I don't believe they're not paid into a SAC fee at that point. But in a situation such as that, if they had paid, and they're out of business for more than 5 years, then there would be a loss of credits, which would be unfortunate.
Well, I gotta believe somewhere in the archives of East Bethel records is all the information of how we figured everything out back in 2012. And how we worked, what the parameters for the loans were, what people participated. I mean, instead of reinventing the wheel, that stuff it's gotta be here somewhere. I mean, granted, some paperwork disappears sometimes, but
Well, it sounds like the Met Council would calculate that for us, is that?
no,
Not-
because
no.
I think that was something, I'll go home and see if it's still on I got papers on my table from
okay.
Now we
2012
know where all
that
the
I
papers
dug
are.
out.
They're in your basement, Bob.
Well, yeah, probably a
Next to
couple
your
big tubs
Corvette?
full. Yeah.
So if there's a motion and approval of this, staff can be tasked with digging in further, and, if there's no interest in doing it, then we're not gonna spend any time on it, obviously. That's kind of the stage in which we're at here, so.
Well, we want to give any reasonably good idea. It's day in the sunshine, No point in writing it off until we
Right.
take a harder look at it.
So you want a motion to further investigate, to come back with more detailed information? Because I don't feel like we have enough information to make a decision, say, yes, let's do this, but I'm for further investigation, absolutely.
Okay,
Craft it however you want to craft it.
yes. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for the city to further investigate loans, lower interest loans to businesses for SAC and WAC hookup charges.
And do research on the credits with Met Council.
And to do research on those credits and, what's the other word? Credits and
I'll second.
Okay,
net credits.
okay, thanks. I have a motion and a second. Any
Discussion.
discussion?
So you're gonna come back with what the interest would be, what, if the city would need a levy on, or anything, any extra cost to the city, that kind, and the credits. Is that correct? Did I miss anything?
There'll be multiple steps, I think. We won't know how many businesses might apply for this as to whether there'd be an increase in levy or not, or a request for that. There's other, city certainly has dollars that could be used as an internal loan transfer, so to speak. So that could be an avenue as well. So,
And where's the money coming from? That was another question.
right,
Yeah.
right. So we have investments right now that are yielding actually very well, given the current interest rates that are out there. But we would want to have the returns at least equal to, so there's no net loss to the city at that point.
Absolutely.
But and that we depending on where that interest amount is, we would have to research that, come back to both the EDA and the council on that.
Okay, well, let's investigate.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more? We have had discussion. Any more discussion? If there's none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. That motion carries. Next item is update of the BR&E program. So at the end of 2023, I met with Greg from Gillis, from ACRED, and Christine Costello at City of Connexus, and Aaron Berg, our Community Development Director. And we just got together to figure out a framework for a new BR&E program. The thought was we would have a leadership team, and Greg and Christine said that they could definitely allocate their time. We had some discussions with the East Bethel Chamber, some of that leadership. There was a willingness for them to contribute some time. But since then, Christine has taken a new position at the City of Golden Valley. So she just started this month. So that throws a little wrench in it, because she was going to be on the leadership team. Connexus was really going to be able to contribute some time, her time for that. And she was really valuable because she had gone through this before when she was at the City of Cottage Grove. So we're at a fork in the road right now. I make a recommendation. I've got to assume, so when Bruce Saylor was with Connexus, he was a big part of our BR&E. I'm assuming that Connexus is going to fill that vacated position, and hoping that we would have the same level of commitment from this new person who takes that place. So, but I don't know when that is going to happen, so I can keep everyone up to date, but unfortunately my recommendation is let's just wait to see what happens with Connexus and this new person on board, and hope that they can be part of the leadership team and help lead this.
So, Madam Chair, I was reading the East Bethel Business Retention and Expansion Strategies Program book, and I see that it's dated 2016, and
Yes.
Taking some note here, it says to demonstrate support for local businesses, to help solve immediate business concerns, to help increase local businesses' ability to compete in a global economy, to establish and implement a strategic plan for economic development, and to build a community capacities to sustain growth and development. I think those are all valuable points, all of which change potentially on an annual basis,
Yes.
depending on markets and economies and interest rates and everything else that goes with it. I know that there's been a push for more on the residential side to get an understanding of where people are at and what they're looking for, what they want from their government. I think in the same token, a survey such as that would be probably critical for the businesses as well to kind of get a more current look at what do you determine to be your local concerns right now. What are some of the detriments that you see that could be improved upon to help you operate more efficiently, either globally, locally, or whatever the case may be, and that might be something that should be put together, that could be sent out to businesses. They could respond back in a Google form or whatever the case is online, something easy, to give a little bit better insight maybe for commissioners on this board to be able to say, I didn't know that was a concern for businesses today, and we can do something about that, or that's a bigger concern than we can handle, but we can maybe chip away on some of the smaller ones. I just think from 2016, the game is night and day different from
Totally
what
changed,
it,
right.
is in 2024. I'm sure, being the new guy on the block, I'm sure all this has been probably regularly updated and kept up to date on, but it might be interesting for a refresh to see if things have changed, if they've changed enough that that decisions could be swayed one way or the other on how to best respond to businesses.
We absolutely need a refresh. So the difference is our 2016 BR&E program, we paid to have led by the University of Minnesota.
Yep.
And we had a strong group of volunteers that led that. Discussions this time around, it's sounding like we're not willing to pay the funds to have the university run that program for us again. So we are relying on the volunteer group to put the questionnaire together, gather the data, and so that's just a big undertaking with trying to find that leadership committee, and I offered to help form that, but I can't commit to being, heading and taking on the day-to-day tasks. So my hope was Connexus Energy could help, and we do have a lot of people have expressed interest in volunteering, but it's just coordinating that effort.
I think from a community development standpoint, we can probably help aid in that as well. That would be certainly a function of community development to
Absolutely.
to be able to compile some of these questions, and again bring them back to the EDA to fine tune and wordsmith or whatever needs to happen, and then get it out to the businesses and see
Sure.
and see what their responses are. Some of them may be obvious, some of them may not be so obvious, but at least there's there's a reaching out from the city because we're concerned.
Yes.
That's good communication. Two, there's a response back that helps us formulate policy at that point. So,
You and I have talked about using SurveyMonkey for residents'
right.
feedback, have a survey of residents, a representative sample. And I've been thinking that it probably would be as effective, not the same survey obviously, but it probably would be as effective to use their services while we're using them on the residents to also deal with the business community too. And just offload it so it's not and there could be follow-ups face to face and all that kind of stuff, but just to offload it, because you're not talking about 100-question survey or something.
No.
You're talking 10 questions.
No, we talked about scaling
Yeah.
it down considerably.
Yeah.
'cause
Right.
We don't need all that information.
And the same thing with the residents. You want to dump a 3-page questionnaire on them. It's like, what, people in East Bethel, it's like, why would I want to tell you everything about myself, That's kind of, that's why we live in the country, is people leave us alone. But we've talked about it. We haven't visited the topic again recently, but we need to.
Yeah, I think it's
I mean-
just a matter of making sure our business list is updated. Do we have correct contact information for everyone? I mean, that's that's part of putting that together too.
And again, it's a representative, say there's 125 businesses in East Bethel, give or take.
If I'm not mistaken, we were going to, didn't we pass where we were gonna have businesses to be registered in the city? There was no fee, there was nothing else, but it was mainly just for the records for police, fire,
Yeah,
the city.
Okay,
yeah.
We're discussing business licensing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly for fire protection and that sort of thing, because we weren't aware of businesses that were moving in, and if they didn't join the chamber,
Didn't know.
you didn't even know they were here.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So, you know, we perceived there'd be some pushback of, you know, big government, you know, but from a public safety standpoint, I think that not only is it good for the public safety fire aspect of it, inspections, but then also we're aware of who's here and what they're doing and everything else. Now, these businesses might respond that their number one issue is workforce. It's gonna be a little hard for this council to you know, solve that problem for them. But that has collateral decision-making opportunities as well. Workforce needs housing, and so how do you make decisions on housing or whatever the case may be? So I think it's just it's a good tool, the SurveyMonkey or whatever format we use, to be able to harvest that information and then be able to decipher it, determine how best to, if you have resource, invest resource, how best to do that. What's your best return on investment? So,
Well, I think the city has done a lot to build back some of the trust with businesses and residents, that if they give some information, it's not gonna be used adversely, or if they offer something up, it's not gonna be stuffed in a can somewhere, it's gonna be looked at. And, you know, communication's probably the biggest thing that, you gotta be able to have the residents' trust. If they don't, they're just not, they're gonna figure no matter what they give you, you're gonna use it. Which with that licensing thing, I haven't heard, I put it out there to some people, I haven't heard any bad feedback.
You know, and talking about this issue in previous meetings, to that point, Bob, about trust is, some businesses are gonna like just taking an online survey, like, I don't have the time to have a long meeting, just, I'll fill this out for you, no problem.
Sure.
But for many, having that availability to meet in person is gonna help build that trust and build that rapport with the city. So we wanna make sure that we have the opportunity for that, for businesses to take advantage of that and invite them to do so. But Matt, to your point about the city staff using their time for that, this is something that Mayor Lewis did bring up at a previous meeting as well. We want to be sensitive to the staff and the time it would require for a big study like this, how that impinges upon your time. So I think that warrants a longer discussion of what that would look like in terms of city time with a study like this.
yeah, I mean, right now we have a scenario where the community development director was going to take on planning and zoning, a planner's type of work as well, or the hope was there. I think it was an optimistic, you know, hope. I think given some of the challenges of time and that's maybe not producing where it needs to produce. So, you know, there was a funded position for a planner that kind of got shifted over to the fire department. They haven't filled that. We're kind of looking at possibly moving it back as a planner. Either there's services out there that will contract planning for you. There's services, you know, you can hire a planner. There's different, you know, there's a range of options there. But freeing up a community development director to, rather than answering how tall can my fence be,
Right.
you know, they're actually working on, you know, reaching out and maybe doing, you know, business gatherings or
Proactive rather than reactive.
right, right. So they're, you know, those are all benefits to possibly freeing up some of their time that's maybe being used for other things at this point. But you know, I think if we see a lot of development coming through as a result of highway investment, we're gonna be screaming busy. So it's gonna be tough to try and do everything at that point. And so some of this, you know, you know, staff can work towards it. If we're finding we're just not effective in doing that, we can come back and say, maybe we need to go out for, you know, some professional help on this or professional services. My first inclination, let's try and get it done before we spend money on going out. But sometimes it is a professional game, you know, where you need to have that expertise, and it's not a bad option to go to, so.
So I want to interject something here. I feel like we're reinventing wheels. When the gentleman was here who presented, probably last summer, I can't even remember when, it was so long ago, he said that answers to questions of new surveys were almost identical to past surveys. So I'm feeling like we already have a lot of the answers. We could go and do a quick Survey Monkey, but I also looked at other surrounding cities like Ramsey. They did one recently, and theirs is like this thick with all their data analysis and stuff like that. They have the answers for us, and we just need to comb through those and figure out what those businesses need are probably the same thing our businesses need and want. So I feel like we're just reinventing the wheel, and it's taken a year now to get this thing going, and we probably have the answers. I mean, we can go do it, but I'm betting that those answers are going to be the same. It's going to be employees, city support, city functions that involve them, that kind of thing.
How many up here remember 80 voltage? That was, I don't know, that was a study that we had done 2011.
That was, my opinion, that was just burning dollars.
Well, it is because the information nobody ever did anything with it, and there was so much contention going on at that time. You know, hell, everybody's trying to get answers here and there, and nobody ever did anything with it. It was quite intensive. In fact, I think I still have it.
I mean, the thing I got out of it was we needed to change the city emblem because I mean,
Yeah.
I remember. Do you remember that as a recommendation, Bob?
And we needed a water park.
Yeah, insofar as this newest program, the new having another BR&E, and I was a strong advocate for it a year ago. I look back now and I see the loss that we have had in some of the people that were involved, specifically Doug Weller.
Oh, yeah, he was the linchpin to that whole program.
Yeah, and I don't see anybody in this community that has that kind of energy and time.
And the time, he was
that
a
Doug had.
retired person who was passionate about the community and growing economic development, you know, and I
a
am too, but I'm
corporate
not
head.
retired, so.
What's that,
A
Bob?
past corporate head. So
Right.
he was a thinker. He
Yeah.
was
Yes,
very professional.
We
very-
put together good teams. You know, my interview partner is now gone out of the community. He was in the service business. I'm a construction guy. He took notes when I was interviewing in a construction company. I took notes when he was interviewing in a service company. I don't know, I'm not a big believer in surveys because I don't think you get a large enough statistical sample back. But I'm also like the idea that they don't cost an awful lot of money and they're easy to do. So I would agree with Kevin that let's look at it from a survey standpoint to the businesses. Insofar as how residents are polled, I think that's best done. Surveys work, but when you've got, 11,000 people in this town now?
12,300.
Yeah. When you got 11,000 people, you need to be able to have 3,000 or 4,000 surveys to come back, in my opinion, to have a significant statistical number to work with. But really what town hall meetings and as we have our next comprehensive plan get started, that's where you really hear from the residents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
residents are one thing, but as it relates to the businesses and our
Right.
BR&E program, I think, Suzanne, your comment about the survey, I mean, the survey is just such a small part of it. I think it was really the business interviews, the personal touch, people connecting with our business leaders. That was where the value was.
Absolutely.
And we had some really great task force. We had East Bethel jobs, growing jobs. I mean, we had some really involved people, but we just need to figure out how to coordinate that all again. And I don't have the answer.
Yeah, I think some of those real large studies, you fall into analysis paralysis.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit out there that you can benefit from. I mean, they'll tell you what it is. You can go talk to the banks; they'll tell you what it is, where they're seeing the challenges right now, and then trying to utilize that information as a catalyst for decision making or policy making at that point, I think is beneficial.
I think you hit the biggest problem every business in the entire United States has, Matt, when you said workforce.
Yep.
Well, I agree
Workforce
with,
and cost of capital.
I agree with Tom that, if you're face to face with somebody, I prefer to meet somebody face to face. It's too easy to BS somebody on the phone or email or whatever. You look at somebody and they must really care. They took time out of their busy city day to come and talk to me.
What I've seen the city of Ramsey successful in doing is they have a EDA business appreciation breakfast. And for whatever reason, people come for free food, but it gives an opportunity then for the EDA members to interface with that one-on-one, to ask those questions, to, kind of dig a little deeper maybe than questions on a questionnaire, although they can be helpful too. It's just one more, I think, avenue for introductions and, getting to know your local businesses and that. And whatever that may cost, that may be something that folks want to look at. Eggs and bacon or whatever in the morning. Coffee is not terribly expensive, but.
I think as EDA members, when the Chamber of Commerce puts on their business breakfast, their chamber meetings, if you go in there as an EDA member, you don't pay. If Brad sees you there and you try to give him any money for your breakfast, he won't take it. So essentially, they're already being held. We just got to go there, so to speak.
April 11th, it's the next one. April 11th, it's the next chamber breakfast.
And are they
So
busy? Are they packed?
that's when everybody shows
See,
up.
everyone
It's
likes free
busy.
food.
Everybody likes
Yes.
free food.
Free
And I-
food,
Right.
man.
Yes.
And it's
And they actually
good.
pay
It's
for
good
it.
food too, isn't it,
It's
Suzanne?
amazing, and it's part of the membership, so we actually pay for it, but it feels free because you're not paying at the door.
Yes. And I'll be giving an EDA update at that breakfast, so,
Oh, good.
yeah.
And I'm gonna be on the docket too. For what, I'm not sure, but I'm on the docket.
Just be ready.
Well, they haven't been indicted yet.
Well, no. Haven't-
To me, that's what means,
Hasn't
when you're on the
brought in-
docket,
hasn't
that
brought in
means,
a
that means,
shipment of
that means that you're
rotten
standing in front of the judge.
Court
No, but
docket.
I like the idea.
Just to comment on what you guys are talking about, it's not either or. It's gonna be a collection of things. It'll be
Yeah.
a combination of surveys, if you'd rather have an in-person meeting. But people who do this stuff for a living deal with this stuff all the time. That's what I'm saying, is some of the best money I ever spent in my life was to hire temporary expertise. Because, I didn't have to go through a long learning curve, or somebody else I was paying didn't have to go through a long learning curve. This is what they do for a living, and they deal with towns like ours all over the United States. So they have that experience to bring to it. And as much as everybody loves to think their little town is unique, we all have a lot more in common than we have different, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So, anyway, So I agree with every single thing you guys have said. Follow up with business. Business people aren't gonna wanna talk about their business perhaps in front of other business people. They'd rather keep it more confidential or whatever, you know, who knows? And, so it's a combination of several things, is what it'll wind up being effective,
Yeah.
including Chamber of Commerce breakfast. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we just need to figure out implementation.
Okay.
At some point.
Yeah, that's been the holdup. I mean,
I
I've
know.
been on this EDA since last June.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been talking about the same thing since then.
We
and-
have,
And not a thing has moved. And so that's just trying to, if we can roll it into Survey Monkey and get something going, you know, it's like when you put up a tent, you have to, at some point, you gotta nail a stake down on one corner to start the process, you know, you can't nail them all down at once, and it's not gonna go up if you don't nail any of them down, so.
And if members would like to commit to going to that breakfast, I think it'd be beneficial, you know, carve it out and get to that chamber breakfast and participate in that and represent the city.
Agreed. All right, we ready to move on to 7.0?
Yeah, unfortunately, I see that's a typo. This would be agenda number 9,
Oh,
as the
there's-
prior one was 8, so a little typo on that. But
Go
we
eight-
just wanted to give a quick business activity report of what was going on. We have the Elevage project there, the Capstone Homes, Hidden Prairie, and some of the other projects that city staff has been working on. Strandland Farms there, Classic Commercial, Team Drywall. So that's just for your information to get an understanding of some of the good things that are happening in East Bethel at this point, some of the approvals that have happened.
I'd like to ask one question. How many people here consistently watch the city council meetings?
I go
Everybody?
back and watch them, but
Okay, 'cause
not real
that's-
time.
I really do think that's essential, and the good news is we're on a new trend. The meeting before last took 23 minutes, and the last one took about 37, so it's not
We're
like,
actually getting something
not like
done.
2 hours, huh? What?
We actually get something done.
Yeah, we're getting stuff done too. So I do think that's essential, and I've said the same thing to the planning commission. It's, you know, if you want to be in an advisory capacity, you have to watch what's going on, you know? And just had to
It's our
speak
new
to
city
that.
administrator. He keeps us on track.
You know, if we do have a booth or something at the Boosters Day, I think all these maps and stuff should be on poster board up there and in big print, all this activity that's happening.
Sure.
Because a lot of people don't know. They have their lives and they're busy and they don't know what's going on.
Yep.
Some do. I give credit. Some are very aware, but a lot of people are so busy.
Madam Chair, I'll just give a quick update on the Highway 65 a little bit. We touched a little earlier on some of the dollars that have come in from the state on Phase 2. Phase 2 is in Blaine. Phase 3 is Bunker Lake Boulevard, and that is being pursued right now by the county. And with discussions with MnDOT, we're starting that discussion as it relates to the various intersections north of Bunker, leading up to 22 and 65. And kind of some of the challenges I know the county has seen with 22 and 65 in the past, and kind of the discussion that's formulating around a grade separated interchange there, as well as you know, to the south and in Ham Lake, what are the intersections down there?
Constance, Crosstown.
And Crosstown, yeah. So those two, as MnDOT had indicated, would need to be kind of taken care of first. So that the concept right now is Phase 4 of Highway 65 that would include those 3 intersections as being upgraded to grade separated interchanges. So as
What
you're
does that mean?
grade separated interchanges, so the you have a separation in traffic. 65 goes underneath maybe, and a bridge over the top.
A bridge.
125th Avenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're taking out stoplights, taking out some of those things that that unfortunately create a lot of accidents with the volumes that we're seeing. So that also, as that development kind of moves up 65, that also kind of is somewhat ringing the dinner bell for businesses. You know, they take note of those type of investments, and so, you know, East Bethel is situated nicely in that you have a kind of a business corridor that's parallel 65. And so a lot of these, I think we'll start getting more calls of who owns that land and what can I build there and things like that. I know we're already starting to get some of those calls, but that's some of the work that I know Commissioner Brasted is currently working on to try and move some of those intersections. The alternative, and if you noted, I started with phase 2, which was funded. Phase 3 is Bunker, so that's already heading north. Phase 1 goes south to the old Highway 10 and into the old Highway 10 and where Highway 10 crosses 65 there. It's about a $250 million proposition in which no one is agreeing to it. So,
Spring Lake Park, isn't it?
Spring Lake Park
Yeah.
area. So because there's no consensus on what that needs to look like, and the dollar figure is absolutely enormous, that the risk is if phase 1 is prioritized over phase 3 or 4, we'll never get to 3 or 4 because phase 1 is going to cost so much money, it's going to take 15 years to try and get funded, similar to Highway 10. So the push is somewhat to say, well, you guys go ahead and fight over what you want to fight over down there. We'll keep moving north and getting the intersections done that need to get done. So just letting the EDA know that that's some of the thinking that's going on, at least as it relates to the county. I think it'd be very beneficial. There's probably not a person in East Bethel that loves the RCI out there. But that's it's an ongoing discussion of what needs to happen there, which is a grade separated interchange. So anyways,
All right,
that's all I have.
thank you. Do we have a city council report?
Go ahead, Mayor.
That's why I asked you if you watched the meetings. Oh, we just covered it, you know, basically business activity is, you know, we put up with a lot of pushback on different issues, but the truth is we're a very pro-business city council, and that should be evident to anybody who's paying any attention. We want people to have the ability to buy, own, and eventually sell property in East Bethel. That was an issue in the recent capstone thing. People have to have the ability to sell land too. You can't make them, you know, hidebound. They buy property, had it for 30 years, and then they can't sell it when they have a solid offer from a major player. And also to reduce the burden of setting up a business, and for the resident standpoint, the variances. It gets very tortured when you have a city code that changes over the years. So you have what was a variance. Matt and I were dealing with something about this today. Something that didn't require a variance 20 years ago, now it does. And well, why does my neighbor have this, but I don't have it? That kind of stuff. So it's very detailed work, and it's time consuming for the staff, and you have to deal with it. So we're trying to accommodate everybody as much as possible and reduce the burden of local government on people as much as possible, control the expenses, and make a good working and living atmosphere. That's as simple as that. It's not very complicated. And we don't have some grand strategy or some vision of, you know, alternative agenda, which I felt some people had in the past, to tell you the truth, as a longtime resident here. And that's the way I took the water sewer thing, right or wrong. That's kind of how I took it, as people had some agenda. But we're just trying to have an enjoyable place to live and work, and to expand the working options, hopefully too, with the industrial, commercial emphasis. I think especially nowadays, what I'm hearing from younger people is that you can scarcely get somebody to go into an office anymore. It's like, I'd rather take half the pay if I can just work from home, you know, that kind of thing. So to be able to work closer to home is highly prized by the younger people nowadays. And I understand it. I was fortunate the last 20 years of my career, I didn't have to commute very much. And I always despised commuting. And I valued it a lot, because I said, why should I drive in when I can do the same thing at home? And I lose 2 hours by driving in, you know, and driving in and driving home. But anyway, that's our simple agenda. And I hope, and again, personally, I took plenty of blowback on this topic too. I seem to be a good target, I guess, and that's fine. But I hope it's becoming apparent why I pushed for Matt is not only his administrative background, his knowledge of the county and having been on the local city council in Ramsey for some years, and the education and all that stuff, but also the connections with the political establishment in the county and in Minnesota. Because as much as it may grind some of us to ask for money from county, state, federal sources, the fact is that it's there and it's going to be handed out. So if you have someone who's skilled at navigating those channels, it's helpful to the city. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is what actually helps the people of East Bethel. So that's it. Other than
Thank
that,
you.
watch the movies of the meetings.
All right.
They're on YouTube.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, we took away your job.
Motion carries. There you go.